Silver Mongoose back for part 2 of the Sega Genesis review. Now, I said this really quickly last time, so just in case you didn't catch it, I was just saying that this controller here can work with multiple systems. It can work with your Sega Master System, your Sega Genesis, all 4 different models. It can also work with your Atari 2600, your Atari 7200, your JVC XI, your Wonder Mega, your Sega CD, and your Sega 32X. So this controller here is a good buy. They're pretty cheap, pretty easy to find. I have 9 of them. That's how not hard they are to find. So now we'll move on to the games. The Sega Genesis had more mature titles, like I said before, and it has a lot of arcade hits. It has not a gigantic library, but it has over 500 games, so it's a library that's large enough. These games, a lot of them came with nice plastic packaging, which is the first mainstream system that I know of that actually came with nice solid packaging. It keeps out dust, keeps out, lowers the oxidation rate, things like that. It's absolutely wonderful for collectors like us. I'll just go through my games pretty quickly, just all the ones that I have. I like Jet's Tac Chopper. I do not recommend it. It is pretty boring, pretty crappy graphics. Marble Madness, as programmed by Michael Schwartz. It's a very good, it's a good game. It's not for everyone, but it's pretty addictive. Mortal Kombat, unless you have a arcade controller, I wouldn't bother getting it. Just get the Super Nintendo version so you can actually play it. I'm not a big fan of Mortal Kombat. I know a lot of people are. Sonic Spinball speaks for itself. Streets of Rage. It says here, it is a classic, and it absolutely is. It is fantastic. It is a great beat 'em up. Cool spot where you get to play the 7-Up red spot that's on the bottle. It's made by Virgin Games. It's great music. You can also find that on the Super Nintendo, however. Doom, the Battle for Arrakis, which is probably one of the first RTSs. It came before Warcraft, Starcraft, before Command & Conquer, before all those things. It has some voices in there, some digitized sounds. It's pretty good. Set the basis for a lot of future RTSs. Echo the Dolphin 1, Echo the Dolphin 2, both very good but also very hard. Some people find it boring. It's not for everybody. Echo Jr., which is essentially Echo but way, way easier if you just can't beat those other two. Taz, Escape from Mars. It's not too bad. And I remember playing it a lot as a kid. I might only like it now because I played it a lot as a kid. Just might be a little bias. Now I have other games because not all games came in those nice cases. I have Revenge of Shinobi, which is a great game about a ninja who has a lot of shurikens and not much else. The Adventures of Batman and Robin, not to be confused with Batman Returns. Absolutely awful game, stay away. Golden Axe, another great beat 'em up, which is pretty much the same as Streets of Rage, except you have swords and there's dragons and the like. Ghouls and Ghosts, another great game, but also fairly hard. Mortal Kombat 2, I said my piece on Mortal Kombat 1, pretty much the same. Streets of Rage 2, just as good, if not better, than Streets of Rage 1. Road Rash 2, lots of great fun. You get to race some motorcycles and hit people with chains and stuff. Tough Man Contest, which is essentially a rip-off of Super Punch-Out, the arcade game. It's not that great. But do not, it says in the back here, do not immerse in water. I know a lot of you like to take baths with your Tough Man Contest, showers and things like that, but just don't. Two Crude Dudes, this is another beat 'em up, and I wouldn't really recommend this one whenever there's great things like Streets of Rage out. And of course, Sonic 2, Sonic 1, and Sonic 3, which I do not have to show you. And Sonic & Knuckles, and for those of you that don't know, you can flip that up there. Just insert another Sonic cartridge and you can play as Knuckles in your Sonic games. It's actually a really, really cool game cartridge. I think that's really neat. A must for any collector. Now, of course, with any system, there are tons of sports games. Now, my experience with sports games for the 16-bit era are, unless you played them as a kid, you don't really want to play them. The ones that I played as a kid, so I would recommend, and I thought were a lot of fun, were FIFA International Soccer and NHL 96, which you can see here is the best sports simulation ever made right. And, hey, sorry about that, my camera's internal memory died on me. So, I just have one more thing to say about EA games that really bothers me. If you guys can't tell, they're a different shape than the other games. I guess they felt like being special, so whenever you shove them in your Sega Genesis, you can actually see that there's a bit of space in there, which will let in dust and stuff, so whenever you're done, make sure you take your game out to protect your system. Now, of course, there are a lot of games which I've played, I rented as a kid, or I played at my friend's house or something, that I don't have to show you, but I have played. And here's a list: Super Contra, Hard Corps, Crusader of Senti, Lion King, Gunstar Heroes, Pac-Man 2, Revolution X, where you get to save Aerosmith. Phantasy Star games, I've heard a lot of good things, a lot of bad things about them. Rystar, Vector Man, Toe Jam and Earl, I've heard a lot of good things about it. I played it, and I didn't really like it, but I guess it's not for everyone. The Comic Zone, where you get to play inside of a comic book. And there's also some that I have never played, but I've heard good things about. Here's another list: Castle of Illusion, Mickey Mouse, Kid Chameleon, Zero Wing, Musha, the Thunder Force games, Shining Force, Herzog Zwei, that's how you pronounce it, Altered Beast, and Space Harrier. So pick up any of those games. Those are all the ones I recommend. There's actually a game that came out in 2006 called Beggar Prince. It was actually officially released. It cost about $40 US. So I thought that was pretty cool. I haven't played it, but I just thought that was an interesting fact. So that's all I have to say about games. Now, for cost and for buying your system, I would of course recommend picking up this guy here, because it may be a bit bigger, but it is cooler looking in my opinion. Your Model 1 or your Model 2 will cost you between $10 and $30. They're really easy to find. They made over 29 million Sega Genesises. Sega Genocide, sounds like genocide. It's not too good. But, so they're really easy to find, they're really cheap. Just keep in mind that you cannot switch your cables from one model to the other. It may actually work at first, but it'll end up damaging your system. Your Sega Genesis Model 3 will cost you about $40, I think. But keep in mind that it cannot play 32X or Sega CD games. Now, most games will cost you just $2 or $3, sometimes $5. I remember getting Streets of Rage 2 for $3 at the pawn shop. And there's tons of cheap games out there. A really hard to find one, or a really good one like Crusader of Senti, might cost you closer to 30. It's 25 or 30 bucks. But for the most part, there's tons of cheap games out there. Cheap games, tons of cheap systems, and like I said before, tons of cheap controllers that are fairly durable. If you are getting a system, I would recommend getting at least one of these for some games. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. So I hope you guys enjoyed my buyer's guide / review, and hopefully it helps you decide whether you're going to get one. Of course, I recommend it. But yeah, that's all for now. And remember, classic games never get old.